I can see with the names, most of us know each other, but still for the sake of the few people where we are meeting the first time, I will do a quick round of introduction. So my name is Priya Sachdev. I am the founder of Sprouting Shoots, been in sales for almost 30 years now, been in the space of consulting, training, and sales strategy transformation for the past 20. If we are not already connected on LinkedIn, please do go find me on LinkedIn. That's what my profile looks like. And just so that you know, I do have a podcast, which I haven't been very regular at, but we'll be getting back to it for sure. It's called Street Wisdom, where we pick up things which could be relevant for salespeople, leaders, and for you personally as well. And we talk about it from not just wisdom, but at a street level application. I also do write a blog. Again, haven't been very regular at it, and this is a good reminder for me to get back in there. So I'm going to be your host today. And just to give you a quick background in terms of Sprouting Shoots. So as Sprouting Shoots, we enable business owners, sales leaders, and sellers to feel more confident of their sales forecast so that they don't live with the pressure of managing cash flows and are able to achieve their committed business objectives. So that's really our space, and that's what we do. We do this by enabling value conversations. Some of the concepts I will talk through the masterclass today are from workshops that we run as well with our clients. We also do a lot of work around building healthy sales pipelines, increasing win rates, driving account growth, developing sales management skills. We find this to be particularly of a requirement today because a lot of us who are sales managers and leaders did not grow up in this environment that we are in today, and which is why it needs a little more development and focus. And also we work around building future ready talent. So that's who we are. That's what we do. Believe in the potential of every little seed that has a viability to become a great forest. Again, very quickly, I'm going to request everybody who's joining in, please mute yourself so that your background noise does not cause disturbance to everybody else. And you can certainly unmute when we get to engaging and asking questions. So what are we going to be discussing today is it's kind of a 5-point agenda, if I can call it that. So we will talk about what is value. Like everybody talks about value selling, value proposition. Let's spend a little time talking about value, and not just value. Why is it important as a discussion today? So that we're kind of clued on to that. We'll talk about what is it when I need to have a buyer first mindset. And it's kind of a precursor to that whole value conversation. We will also spend time talking about the buy-sell relationship and how that contributes to the whole value conversation. A reminder for all of us to remember, you may be in B2B or B2C sales, but remember when we say B2B sales as well, it is more importantly human to human selling. And I just see that with all the technology we have today, somewhere we need a reminder around this. And last but not the least, I hope to leave you with a quick formula that you can use so that you can be more focused on making value statements with your clients. So that's broadly the agenda we have today. And let me also give you a bit of an insight. Beginning of the year, as we started 2023, we thought, okay, what would be the focus for this year? What would bring value to people? So we went around, looked at a lot of trend reports, which are published by so many people. We looked at what's happened in the past year. And we curated 10 practices we thought would be critical to make a difference between surviving to thriving in 2023. We've in the past done webinars around some of these. And if you look at point number 6, even there we were talking about value selling being the theme for 2023. And one of the reasons that we spoke about that is that looking at where we are in our worlds today, more than ever before, if you are not engaged in value selling, you are struggling with your conversion ratios, right? So I just wanted to give this a perspective. There is a quick white paper I have on this. If any of you are interested, put that in the chat and I will ensure that I will get that to you on an email post this session. New people joining us, and my request would be please mute yourself as you come into the Zoom room, and feel free to unmute yourself as you have questions or use the chat window. Thank you. Okay. So what is value? And I just love this Kobe Simon's tweet, which I use every time I'm talking about value, because to me, it's a great explainer on what is value, right? So a bottle of water can be 50 cents at a supermarket, a $2 at a gym, $3 at movies, and $6 on a plane. And translate that to your INR values, you know this is true, right? So the water or the bottle don't change in terms of its criteria or its features, but where is it available and how much are you willing to pay for it changes. And I think that's an important thing to remember. I also like the last line in his quote, which says, next time you feel your worth is nothing, maybe you're at the wrong place, which is true as well. But I'm going to ask you to put this in the chat. What is your understanding of value? If I were to ask you, and you're here for a value selling masterclass, what does value mean for you? Warren Buffett says, price is what you pay, but value is what you get. So tell me more. What does value mean for you guys? Go ahead, put it in the chat. Come on, masterclass means that we are engaging with each other and you're not just here listening to me and multitasking and doing other things. So you will have to use the chat with me as we go ahead into this session. And I'm getting you started with the first question. What is value in your understanding? All right. Thanks, Priya. Giving what is much required. Perfect. That's a good way of putting value. In business context, helping clients achieve their results, over delivering and creating impact. Yeah, for sure. I like the over delivering piece to that. Something worth buying. Yep. Okay. Let's keep going on this and let's see, why are we talking about value today? What makes this an important discussion for us to have today? So what does our world look like? And I'm sure you'd agree on these points that I bring up. And if you don't, tell me in the chat, because I am looking at the chat as we go through this. We are far more globally connected than we ever were. And the best example is this call. I am right now sitting in Canada, which is 6 a.m. in the morning. And we are having this conversation at 6:30 your time. And you are joining this call from different places within the country as well. So we are globally connected more than ever before. We are socially engaged. In fact, today, more than news apps, we believe on our social media for all the updates that we need. We seek out for help on social media as well whenever we have a query or we want to know something. And which is why if you, every time I go on a social platform, I can't, I keep thinking, how digitally crowded are we becoming? And also the fact that, and I don't know if you've sensed it, but I can tell you, we are becoming fiercely competitive. And I think the multiple reasons for that, we've seen some tough times, which kind of make us more competitive than ever before. But for sure, we are seeing an increase in the competitiveness of organizations in the marketplace. Priya, I did notice your question, and I will for sure answer that as we go ahead a little more, because I am going to be talking about some of the concepts that will help answer that question. So I'm going to request you to hold on to that one. Anybody got anything on what you're seeing in the world? And tell me, with all the technology that you use today, has technology helped you build buyer proximity, which means it makes you feel closer to your buyers than you ever were? So is technology building buyer proximity for you? Just drop in a yes or a no, or a maybe if you're not sure. Yes. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. And I'm sure all the monies we are spending in technology is of value. However, I personally feel, and this is just a personal opinion here, that while it helps us in kind of engage with our buyers more, I'm not sure if it's really build proximity with them. So certainly buyer engagement has increased thanks to technology. I was just telling some of you guys who joined in earlier, in the waiting room, I had note takers join in, even without the people joining in. That's an example, right? If you have a meeting in your calendar, technology triggers the fact that you should be joining the meeting. And if you don't, your note taker will. Does it build proximity? I don't know, but it will record the call for you, and you can go back and listen to it at your own convenience if that helps. As a seller, that doesn't really help me though. Also tell me, we've been through volatile times, and the volatile times will continue. Is volatility equal to risk aversion? Are you seeing your customers, your prospects hesitating in terms of taking risk, which also sometimes mean taking decisions because they don't feel confident of that? So what are you seeing there? Is volatility equal to risk aversion? Because I can tell you, at least in the conversations that we are having with our clients, certainly sales cycles have become longer, which is what tells me that they are taking longer to take decisions because they are weighing out the risks of taking the decision, or sometimes not taking the decision as well, right? Is there a desperation to win? Do you see that for people who are reaching out to you as customers? So now I'm asking you not to stay in the sales role, but think of yourselves as buyers as well. You buy multiple services day in and day out. Do you feel through the messaging that comes to you, there seems to be a desperation to win? And have you sensed that? Yeah, absolutely. And this is why that value conversation is becoming so important, right? That noise around us that's getting created. Exactly. Some of us are feeling pushed. It feels like, it's like if you went to a store and there was a seller trailing you everywhere you went and telling you, why don't you look at this? Why about buying this? Here's a deal on this one. You're like, oh, come on. I know what I'm here to buy. Stop pushing things at me. It's happening with all the apps we use today, right? I don't know if any of you have experienced it, but if you're on a Nykaa or a Myntra app and you add something to your cart and you don't complete the purchase, it triggers a slew of messages your way to say, hey, you have something in your cart. Here is an extra discount. Here is a better deal. But attempt to convert is really, really building that desperation to win over the client. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, okay? I'm just saying it's creating a noise. And which is why when we look at our sales messaging and our sales engagement, value is becoming such an important part. Don't tell me I need to buy from you without showing me what's the value it delivers to me. So what is value? Value is not the product for sure, right? Value is what the product delivers for me. And if that be true, then where is that messaging of what does that deliver for me, right? And that is the important thing that we need to focus on. Also, if we kind of move to that concept of buyer first mindset, what is a buyer first mindset? And there are two elements around buyer first mindset. First one is personalization, and the second one is contextualization. So let's just talk to these 2 points. What is personalization? So from time forever, whenever we've done market segmentation, market research, attempt is to look at a sample size and then create some kind of categorization. And, in marketing, we'd always say N is equal to whatever number, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. That was the number of the sample we had reviewed before we started to create messaging. However, interestingly, with technology coming in, now we want N to be equal to 1. I don't care if you speak to the category. I care if you speak to me. So there is this innate need all of us have where we want all the messaging to speak to me. And I know that we still like to bucket people and tailor messages. But are we being as specific as we can? And this is where I think the important thing is looking at how you use technology. Because while technology can help in coverage, technology does need labels in terms of sending out messaging. So if you weren't convinced that personalization is important, here is data. This is a McKinsey report. And again, I have a copy of an excerpt of that report. So if you're interested in the report, do let me know and I will get that over to you. But what the data on this report says is companies that capture more value from personalization grow faster. And look at the difference in terms of data. 40% more revenue for personalized marketing actions or tactics. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, well, I do B2B. Maybe this data is more B2C or FMCG. So here is another data point, and I just like this quote, which is why it made it on my slide. Brian, who's a principal analyst at Altimeter, says business buyers don't go to work and forget what they do as humans. There is a new normal that blurs the line between B2B and B2C. They just want things personalized. And I think this is an important thing to kind of play with before we move on, because a lot of times I find that when salespeople are in B2B, they respond very differently to how they would have responded, or they would have people respond to them when they are buyers in the B2C environment. So here we are using a Netflix that has data to know what I like to watch. It gives me recommendations of what I would like to watch. It even keeps running those trailers for me to kind of get a sneak peek into if I will like what I am being recommended. Now cut to B2B. I need a proposal, and sometimes the client takes 5 days to come back to me for a proposal. It's the same person. I'm the same person who's using the Netflix, who knows that I am being proactively recommended things. And it is the same me when I'm making a decision at work, which is more B2B. I'm being asked to wait for 5 days for even getting a single document that will help me in my decision journey. So there is a depart, and this depart is becoming more stark than ever before. So here is data which also says that even in the B2B world, personalization is key to winning business. So the green ring that you see is consumers, which is B2C. But the yellow ring that you see is data from business buyers. And even they are saying exactly the same thing. 84% of customers say, I don't want to be treated like a number. I am not 41X, blah, blah. I am Priya Sachdev, and I want that to be acknowledged and utilized in the engagement you have with me. So the question here for you to think about is, how do you do personalization, specifically when you are doing outreach to your kind of prospects whom you have done no engagement with before? Because once we've connected, we build a relationship, we still get better at personalization. But the big struggle is what we used to call cold calling. I know some people don't agree with me when I do keep saying, but I think cold calling is dead because of all the technology that's available to us. If you are still reaching out to people who don't know you at all and it's a cold call, there is something you're missing. It is not cold calling. It is warm engagement that we need today, which is where this whole idea of personalization really comes in, right? The second bit there is what I mentioned earlier, contextualization. So what is the difference between personalization and contextualization? Personalization is speak to me. Contextualization is understand the environment that I live in. So do you understand what is impacting the business of your customer? Or what does your customer's customer want from them before you start having that conversation with your customer if you're in B2B? So contextualization is really taking this away from just talking to me, but talking not just to me, but to the environment. So you could be talking to me as an individual, but then if you understand what I am going through or what I'm struggling with, you can also contextualize your conversations to that. So here is a nice Venn diagram that I like by Andy, which says, so what is contextualization is sitting right in that center, which has the C, right? It is the persona of your buyer or prospect. It is looking at that observable time and space in which they are currently. And then it is looking at the purpose, process, activity, and the intent. It's looking at what is the area that you become relevant in. And it is putting all those three things together and then coming to that core idea of contextualization. So while a lot of the technology we can have, if you're using any of the sales tech tools that help you do personalization by putting people's name in. And I can tell you, every day I get messages on LinkedIn which have just picked up my headline and have used it in the email. And my headline is not my designation, but the technology doesn't know that. And it has a message that says, "Dear Priya, whatever, whatever." And recently I got a message where somebody was selling to me quality assurance services without knowing what do I do for work. And those are completely random and bring no value to conversation. And I keep saying this to people, instead of helping your brand, it is taking your brand one step further away from the client. Because I'm not going to buy quality assurance. I don't even need it. But now what is the perception of that brand that I have built in my mind? Will that brand ever get the advantage of the fact that I know they exist? Because the experience has been so sad. So it's not just important to do outreach. It's about being relevant. It's about engaging with relevance. And here is data where B2B buyers are saying, what do I value? And they're saying, firstly, do you know my industry? Do you understand my organization's unique business issues? Do you understand what do I do? What are my KPIs? Or where am I based? Which region do I work with? And do you understand the nuances of the region? And I can tell you that the regions are very, very different. You're selling in India versus you're in North America versus you're selling in Australia. It's a different world out there. And it's not just knowing the language, but understanding those specific nuances. And then who have you worked with and what have you learned from them? So maybe companies about the same size or same industry as mine. So contextualization is important. And one important thing that kind of helps you contextualize is research. And I think this is my favorite part in every workshop I do, asking people, how much time do you spend in research before you reach out to a customer? So go ahead, put this in a chat. If you think about your week as a 40-hour week, and maybe you work more, but just for example, how many hours out of that 40 hours, or what percentage of the 40 hours do you spend in doing research so that you can create personalization and contextualization with your clients? Go ahead, put that number in the chat. Tell me, what percentage of your time do you spend of your average work week in terms of doing research, reviewing annual reports, looking at data, understanding the industry, understanding the person before you actually reach out to them? I know currently, if I were to look at my week, I would spend somewhere about 30-35% of my time in doing research. And I know it is a low figure right now because I am working on existing projects and not doing outreach as much, but such a critical part of where we need to start investing our time. Yeah, so 40% for proposals, 75% on research. Wow, Priya, that's a lot of time. 20% says Shruti. Yeah. And I can tell you, we talked to a concept of ROTI. ROTI means return on time invested. And the best return on time invested is on the time you've spent on research. Contrary to what people would think, it is not an engagement, because if you didn't get that right, that time is a complete waste. So I have a R5 framework here. Consultants love creating frameworks, right? So what is the R5? It is talking to the right person about the right problem at the right time on the right platform. I think this is also becoming very, very important, because today we have various platforms to engage with our customers and prospects. And finally, discussing the right outcome. And if you can get all these 5 R's in, you would have built a buyer first mindset. So if you have one thing to take away from everything we've discussed so far, this be it. Talk to the right person about the right problem at the right time, on the right platform, discussing the right outcome. And you will see none of this talks to a product yet, right? Because people don't buy products. People buy what a product can do for them, which is why this is so important. Okay. So tell me what you see in this cartoon. And, very often in sales, we've said perception is reality. And I like to believe perception is not just reality, but perception is also about relativity. Now, ideally, I would love to be in this situation, because this fairly feels like a win-win, though I hate being stuck in water because I can't swim. But the fact that somebody is happy to see a boat and says, wow, there's a boat, and the person on the boat says, wow, there's land. And it's kind of both of them want to be at the same place for a different reason. A lot of times this is happening to us, with us, when we start to think about buyer-seller relationships. Now, the question here is, that if you are perceived to be a commodity vendor, can you do value selling? And that kind of goes back to a question that I think was asked earlier as well, which is to say, I don't know how to value my services, uh, and how do I quote my price? Because does the customer even value it or not? And where is that coming from? Is really saying, if I am seen as a commodity vendor, can I talk about value? And this is important because this is not just, it's not like throwing a net in and catching fish. It's about understanding and creating a strategy. It's not just a fishing net. And, when you think about a buy-sell relationship, we often talk to this 5 levels of hierarchy you can have in terms of a buy-sell relationship. And if you look at that first step on this ladder, it says, I am seen as a vendor that delivers a commodity that meets specifications, versus a level 2, which says, I deliver good products and or services, which means I'm not just a vendor, I'm a quality vendor. However, you see the difference happen at a level 3 because we move from deliver to provide, which is more proactive. Deliver is reactive. Provide is proactive. So now at a level 3, I provide good services and support. I moved up and I'm perceived at that level 3 versus at a level 4, where I'm perceived to be contributing to my customers' business issues or contributing to their organizational issues. So now think about, and I want you to think about a specific customer or a specific account that you're working with. And tell me, with that account, where would you want to be on these 5 levels of the buy-sell relationship? Would you like to be at a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, or a level 5? Just type in the number in the chat window. Where will you like to be on this buy-sell relationship with your customer? Go ahead, put that in the chat. Level 1 to level 5 is your scale. Where would you like to be? So I know that we are currently working on a project with a client, and believe me, we started that project at a level 2, and we've almost kind of delivered the major chunk of that project. However, we are still struggling to move up to a level 3. Now, here is another question, and I see most of you said 5, 4, 4, or 5. Now, the same customer or the account you were thinking about, if I were to ask them the same question, where do they see you as a vendor, partner, seller? Where would they put you on these levels? Would they say, I want you to deliver commodity that meets specifications? Would they say, I want you to deliver a good product? Or do they want you to contribute to business issues? And the reason I'm asking you to think about that is that first question that I asked you. If you are seen as a vendor that delivers commodity that meets specifications, can you do value selling? The answer is no. You have to earn the right to have a value conversation. And if you look at this buy sell relationship hierarchy, you earn the right of a value conversation only when you reach level 3 or above. Because before that, you are not perceived for the value. You are only perceived to deliver a good product or deliver a commodity product, which is why that conversation becomes so important. And more important than where are you or where do you want to be is the question to say, are you aligned with your buyer? If your buyer sees you at level 2 and you want to be at level 4, you need to have a strategy to move from level 2 to level 4 by bringing value into the conversation. So remember, value is not, it's not an absolute number. So if I say 100, is 100 a big number or a small number? You're going to say, well, it depends. It depends. What are you comparing it with? 100 compared to 10 is a big number. However, 100 compared to 1,000 is a small number. So it's never about what 100 is. It's about what is the rest of the context around it, which is where that time spent in research becomes so important. Because if I don't understand the context, I'm not going to do very well on that, right? Excuse me. Also remember, when we are talking B2B, B2B is edge to edge or human to human, right? We've seen with the change of all that's happening around us, more technology coming in, more virtual environment that we work in and engage in, we're seeing almost 6.8 or 7 decision makers getting involved in a single decision to be made. We are also seeing the sales cycles, which is the time taken to close the deal, has increased. And in fact, research says that 8 out of 10 sellers said that they lost a deal or it got stalled in the past 12 months because a key stakeholder either left the organization or his or her role changed in the organization, which means I hadn't mapped the new person, because of which I either lost a deal or the deal got pushed to the back burner. And this is, ouch. I never wish this would happen to anybody. And the reason of that is that if I'm looking at my cost of customer acquisition, this is what increases my cost of customer acquisition, where we've engaged with the customer for a while, the decision makers have changed, moved, and we don't know the new people. So going back to that buyer first mindset, important that you spend time in personalization and contextualization as you engage with these people. And there are various frameworks available there, maybe a discussion for another masterclass where we can talk about stakeholder mapping, but very, very important to do. Also, one reason why I feel that my job will never be taken away by a bot is this. This is an example of a buyer journey, and Gartner did a great job in creating this. But this is the thing with technology, right? Technology can follow a process if it's linear in nature. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's not good at doing things impromptu, which is why, because it needs to be programmed, which is why we need people, right? Which is why sales is a good job to have, because we will always need people to sell as long as people are making decisions to buy. Now imagine this buyer journey that you're seeing there and looking at how you need to navigate this, because you can see, even if you're not reading it, you can see how the arrows go crisscross all over the place, right? This is how buyers make decisions today. It's not that I go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. It's a lot of moving around. It's a lot of sub steps. It's a lot of people getting involved. Remember, 7 people we saw on the earlier slide. Now, all of that plus a lot of online engagement that I'm doing, a lot of articles I read, a lot of white papers I may pick up, a lot of discussions I may have on social platforms, and then making the final purchase decision. Which is why engaging with each individual stakeholder is of so much value that you can never say, it's okay, this person's not important. Doesn't work, right? So, quick question here, just out of curiosity. Have you done buyer journey mapping for your customers that you sell to? Have you formally got a buyer journey map for the prospects and the customers you sell to? Because if you do not have that, I would highly recommend you to invest time in doing that. In fact, it's one of the first things we do when we start engaging with a client is to do buyer journey mapping. And I can tell you this is such a big gap on it today. And also the reason, because the buyer behavior has changed multi-fold in the past, let's look at a window of 4 years. So very, very important to do. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question around ice cream. It's always good fun to talk about ice cream. This is the ice cream principle. So there is research done by L.I. Altman, which says that if you send 10 people to go buy ice cream and you tell them to buy any flavor, as long as all the 10 people agree on the flavor, do you know what flavor they come back with? And I know it's written there on the slide if you're reading it while I'm talking, but it is vanilla. They always, almost always come back with vanilla. What that research actually said was that, sometimes as sellers, we think I have to get the most innovative proposal on the table. But the wisdom of the crowd, which is if I have to get everybody to agree on one solution, it doesn't have to be the most innovative solution. Sometimes it is the only one simple solution that people will agree upon. It's like vanilla. So important thing then to think about as sellers is how well do you position your vanilla, right? If I ask you to make a decision and I say vanilla, chocolate, choose, you can choose either vanilla or chocolate because there is a very clear differentiation between the two flavors. However, if I said vanilla, vanilla, choose, what do you choose? You're going to be like, what's the basis of me making a decision? They're both vanilla. Tell me more. Now, I can tell you how many times this happens to our clients as well. What you are selling and what your competitor is selling is the same vanilla. And the client is saying, help me differentiate between the two vanillas. And what is the most obvious criteria that helps us in making a differentiation as buyers is price. So if you feel that the customer only wants to know the price and they keep going back and asking me about price, despite and in spite of everything else that I'm talking about, remember you're selling vanilla. They are buying vanilla. And if I cannot differentiate my vanilla to my peers or other people in the industry, the customer will fall back on price to make a decision. Important thing, wisdom of the crowd doesn't buy the most innovative solution. You can read more about this research if you are curious by typing ice cream principle, and you'll find interesting data points come up in the research. So I wish I could live in my customer's brain, even though I'm sure I'm going to be lost there, because this is what my buyer's brain may look like. They are not just taking one thing and making a decision. So even when we say price, we know that when people ask us about price, what they are asking is not just about price. They are using price as an indicator of any of these other things that you see there, right? It could be an indicator of cost. It could be an indicator of superior value. For some reason, in our minds, in our brains, we think expensive is better quality. I didn't create that perception, but it seems to exist. Risk. If I have to over exceed my budget, the first question I have is that too risky for me to do? Danger, does it stimulate the danger primal part of my brain right here at the back, which gets into fight or flight mode? But it's really to be thinking about what is your buyer thinking as they go through that buyer journey. And that becomes important for us to know before we can have the value conversation with them. So I'm going to take a quick pause there. If you have any questions for me so far, because then I'm going to give you kind of like a formula on how to create value statements. But before I get there, I want to answer any questions that you may have. Anything, anybody? So we've spoken about a couple of key concepts, and I kind of went through them really fast, but we spoke about buyer first mindset, where we're talking about contextualization and personalization. We're talking about the buy-sell relationship. And then we are talking about the fact that there are people who are going through that buyer journey. And it's important for us to engage with them, doing kind of justice to the wherever they are, whatever they're looking for, and then being able to engage with them. So great question, Bhavna. How can value selling work at the initial stages of prospecting? Well, value selling works everywhere, because you can't start to prospect and then say, once I start a conversation with you, I will then show you the value of what I can do. I have to start with saying, let me show you how I can bring value to your environment, which is why research becomes very important. So in the initial stages of prospecting, how do you do research about the organization you're selling to, about the specific function that you are targeting, about the specific person you will be engaging with, and then understand what could be valuable for them. What will they think is value, not what my product delivers. I think our biggest challenge is we start product first, not buyer first. And it's a conditioning that we need to change. When you join a new organization, what are the first few components of your onboarding program are around product mix. We don't talk about customer mix. We talk about product mix. As organizations, I think with time, we've just kind of invested too much energy in building amazing products. In fact, right now, I'm discussing this with a startup who've launched a SaaS product, and they were just debating this yesterday to say we have a product-led strategy of growth. It's called the PLG. And I was telling them, well, it's a product-led growth is a great strategy, but actually that strategy needs to be buyer-led growth, not product-led growth. And I think this is where sometimes we need to change the labels of the language we use. The amount of research you can do if you used technology the right way. There are tools that will give you intent score. You know what that person or that organization are searching for based on an intent score. And yet we do cold calling and send them scripted messages using, and no offense to any of the tech tools like Outplay or Outreach or any of the others that you may be using to send out automated cadence messages. And it's okay to do that, but it's really, really important on how do we do contextualization and personalization there. So here is kind of building on to a formula. And just one thing I will say before I get into that is, I don't know if you've heard about this concept of anchoring, but anchoring is really, it's that first thing that you hear that creates an anchor in your mind based on the fact that you will measure everything against that one criteria point then. So for example, if you went into the market to buy a couch and the first couch that you saw was 20,000 rupees. Now, all the other couches that you will see after that, you are going to compare it to that 20,000 rupees and say, is it expensive or is it cheap? So somewhere that 20,000 rupees, which is that first price point that you heard, has become an anchor for the rest of them. And now this is important to know. And I'm not saying this for price only. I'm just taking price an example. But whatever value you deliver, you could use that to anchor that concept in your client's mind so that they then use your value as a benchmark for everybody else that they work with. So going back to that point around, should I be talking about value in prospecting? Yes. Yes, 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 because you have an opportunity to be the anchor. Because if you anchor a criteria or a concept in the mind of your customer, they are going to measure everything else based on that. So it is absolutely worth the investment. And while you'll find there are various tools out there that will tell you how to create value propositions, broadly, each one of them talks to the same thing. It's really looking at what is the benefit or what is the pain that your customer has and what will it deliver as an outcome. So in the interest of time, I'm going to jump to a quick formula, even though I always say I hate formulas. And in sales, you cannot have formulas, but I am still giving you a formula. So to build your value statements, it's as simple as being able to say, we help X do Y without W or Z. And what is X? X is the person you're selling to, the persona. What is Y? Y is the desired result that the persona needs. And what is W is pain, one, or it could be the aspiration. And what is Z is the pain, two. So if you want to put out a value statement, here is a quick formula that can help you build that out. You may not kind of remember it, but my first slide talking about sprouting shoots, I used a value statement using exactly the same formula. Here is another example of something I use often. We work alongside founder owners, which is my X, to build strong valuation for their business, which is my Y, by building digital maturity. So digital maturity is their pain, and we are saying we can help you build that, and an effective sales ecosystem. So if you see in this statement, I haven't put them as pains, but I have put them as aspirations. You can also put it as pain. For example, I'm reaching out to you because we help digital marketers, which is X, acquire new B2B customers, which is Y, without increasing the cost per acquisition, which is W, or the media budget, which is Z. So remember, we are using a formula, but we're trying to build in personalization and contextualization. You will not be able to use this formula well if you haven't done research and if you do not know who you're selling to, because the more specific you can be, the more sharp your value statement will be. Another example there is, as partners to business owners, we enable businesses to move from surviving to thriving by building professional structures and systems to withstand volatile markets. So I gave you 3 examples. Why don't you give me some? Let's see this formula in application. Take a minute. If you have a paper or a pen, if not, open your mobile phone and open the notes and go ahead, write down what would be the value statement to someone you're trying to do outreach to tomorrow. No, today you're at the end of the day, so I'm saying tomorrow. And if you want to get feedback on this one, right here, right now, I can give you feedback. Go ahead and put the value statement that you craft right here. Let's see some examples come through. I gave you 3. Give me at least 1, guys. Anybody giving it a shot? Okay, I hope you are working on that. And while you keep doing that, I am just going to also summarize what we've done and kind of bring it together. So the key concepts that we spoke about in our value selling masterclass today were those 5 points. What is value? How do you have a buyer first mindset? How do you understand the buy sell relationship? How do you ensure it's human to human connection? And finally, the fifth point around this value statement formula, which can help you create value in every engagement that you have with your clients. So, also going to have to do a sales pitch, which is the reason why we are here, right? So, what do we do as Sprouting Shoots? We help business owners, organizations, sales leaders get consulting across the entire sales value chain. So we help create sales strategy glide paths, create customer buying journey maps. One thing that you saw and is of immense value. We also do sales enablement roadmaps, a lot of sales and marketing alignment, and building future ready talent. So if you need any of these services or you know anybody who needs any of these services, do refer us, let us know. We don't do just consulting, but we also partner for execution. And thank you so much for joining us. This is the team at Sprouting Shoots, and it's been a pleasure to work with you guys here today. I do hope you found some value.